It's 3 in the morning and you're lying in bed, wide awake, your heart racing with a sense of panic you can't explain. Nothing specific has happened. There's no real crisis. Your life, at least on paper, is functioning perfectly. You have work, relationships, goals being met, but there, in the silent darkness of your room, something terrible takes hold of you, the absolute certainty that you're wasting your one life, that you're living like a stranger inside your own existence, that with each passing day you drift further from who you really are. And the worst part, you have no idea how to stop it. If this scene is familiar, if you've lived through this dawn of existential terror, I need to tell you something that may sound absurd, but is absolutely true. You are experiencing the sanest possible reaction to a society that has become profoundly insane. This anguish you feel is not depression, it's not pathological anxiety, it's your soul screaming because it's being suffocated by a way of life that promises everything but delivers a sophisticated version of nothing. What you're feeling is what happens when a real human being tries to survive in a world designed for creatures that don't exist. Imagine for a moment that you were a fish born in a perfectly clean, climate-controlled aquarium with abundant food and no predators. Technically, all your survival needs would be met, but something in you would know viscerally and undeniably that this is not the ocean. This is what's happening to us. We've been placed in a civilizational aquarium so sophisticated that we've forgotten what it's like to breathe salt water, feel deep currents, swim in vastness that connects us to something greater than ourselves. This story is not unique. It's the portrait of a silent epidemic spreading through our society in a way we've never experienced before in human history. We're living what I call the modern connectivity paradox. We've never had so many ways to connect with other people, never had access to so much knowledge, so many entertainment possibilities, so many ways to express ourselves and seek validation, and yet we've never felt so profoundly alone and disconnected from ourselves. To understand how we got to this point, we need to go back in time and examine something fundamental about human nature. For millions of years of evolution, our brains developed to function in small groups where each person personally knew everyone else they interacted with. Our nervous system was calibrated to interpret subtle communication signals, tone of voice, facial expression, body language, the shared context of common experiences. We were creatures who lived in simple collective narratives where life's meaning emerged naturally from survival tasks, community rituals, close relationships that remained stable over decades. Our emotions evolved to guide us in this environment. Anxiety alerted us to real and immediate dangers. Joy rewarded genuine connections and achievements that had direct impact on our life and our community's life. Sadness helped us process real and significant losses. Our sense of identity formed through constant recognition by people who knew us deeply, who witnessed our journey, who validated our existence simply by seeing us day after day, year after year. Now, in just a few decades, we've radically changed the conditions in which our brains operate, but we haven't changed the brains themselves. It's as if we took a machine designed to function in a small artisan workshop and placed it to operate in a modern industrial factory. The machine doesn't break immediately, but it starts presenting strange problems, inexplicable noises, accelerated wear that we can't fully understand. Think about what happens to you in a single day. You wake up, and even before getting out of bed, you're already processing information from dozens, perhaps hundreds of people through social media. Your brain, which evolved to deal with a group of at most 150 individuals, suddenly needs to categorize, evaluate, and emotionally respond to fragments of life from people you've never met personally. Each post you see carries an emotional charge: envy, compassion, anger, desire, fear. Your mind tries to process all this as if it were information relevant to your survival, because that's how it was programmed by evolution. During the day, you interact with hundreds of other people through messages, emails, comments, likes, shares. Each of these interactions demands a micro-emotional investment, a small decision about how to present yourself, how to respond, how to interpret the other's intentions. But these interactions don't lead to the kind of deep satisfaction our brain seeks, because they're not accompanied by the signals of real intimacy it recognizes as valid. Eye contact, physical touch, time shared in common activities, consistent physical presence. At the end of the day, you may have talked to more people than our ancestors knew in an entire lifetime, but your brain interprets this experience as profound loneliness because none of these interactions satisfied the evolutionary criteria for genuine connection. It's like being hungry and eating only sugar. There's momentary stimulation, but no real nutrition, and you end up hungrier than when you started. The technology that was supposed to connect us has created, without us realizing it, a completely new form of isolation. It's not the physical isolation our grandparents might have experienced living on a remote farm. It's a much more insidious isolation. Isolation in the middle of a crowd, loneliness surrounded by constant stimuli, disconnection masked as hyperconnection. But there's something even deeper happening here, something that goes beyond the issue of social media and technology. Our modern society has created what I call the fragmented attention economy, where we're constantly asked to divide our consciousness between multiple tasks, multiple identities, multiple versions of ourselves. You have your professional version, your family version, your social media version, your dating app version, your hobby group version, and so on. Each of these versions requires you to maintain a slightly different narrative about who you are and what you want. The problem is that our sense of identity didn't evolve to deal with this fragmentation. Traditionally, you were basically the same person in all contexts of your life. There were variations, of course, but there was a consistent core that other people recognized and that you yourself recognized as genuinely you. Now, many people report a disturbing experience to me. They no longer know which of these versions is really them. It's as if they've become actors, playing various roles, but lost connection with the actor behind the roles. This identity fragmentation generates a particular kind of existential anxiety. You can be succeeding in various areas of your life simultaneously and still feel lost because there's no coherent narrative connecting all these parts. You can be receiving constant validation on social media and still feel invisible because this validation is directed at your public personas, not at your deepest and most vulnerable self. The situation becomes even more complicated when we consider how our society has redefined the concept of success and personal achievement. We've been conditioned to believe we must constantly be optimizing our performance, maximizing our productivity, expanding our possibilities, growing our network, improving our personal brand. Life has become a perpetual self-improvement project, where any moment of satisfaction with what we already have is interpreted as dangerous complacency. But here's the cruel paradox. The more we try to optimize our life experience, the more we distance ourselves from the ability to simply live. The more we focus on measuring and improving our happiness, the less capable we become of experiencing spontaneous joy. The more we try to control our public image, the more we lose contact with our private authenticity. It's like trying to catch water with your hands. The more force you use to hold it, the more it escapes through your fingers. Our ancestors had an advantage we've lost. They knew they had no control over most of their lives. This acceptance, while sometimes generating suffering, also allowed moments of genuine presence, simple gratitude, deep connection with the present moment. We, on the other hand, have been convinced that we can and should control not only our external circumstances, but also our internal states. When we can't, we interpret this as personal failure, which generates even more anxiety and self-deprecation. The modern wellness and personal development industry, paradoxically, often intensifies this problem. We're bombarded with messages about how we should feel, how we should think, what practices we should adopt, what mindset we should cultivate. Even our attempts to find inner peace become another item on the list of tasks to be optimized. We meditate to be more productive, do therapy to be more functional, practice gratitude to be happier, as if they were all means to achieve a final state of emotional perfection that actually doesn't exist. I want to pause for a moment to ask, do you also feel this profound disconnection in your daily life? This sensation that despite being more connected than ever through technology, something essential has been lost along the way? I know it can be difficult to put into words. Many of us carry this weight in silence, believing we're the only ones to feel this particular emptiness. But you're not alone in this. If this feeling resonates with you, share your experience in the comments. It can be as simple as writing, "I feel this disconnection when," and completing with your personal experience. Your comment might be exactly what another person needs to read today to feel they're not alone in their struggle. Sometimes, naming what we feel is the first step to transforming it. There's something deeply ironic about the fact that our era, which prides itself on having democratized access to information and opportunities, has simultaneously created a more subtle but perhaps more devastating form of oppression, the oppression of infinite possibility. Our grandparents may have had fewer career options, fewer partner options, fewer lifestyle options, but this limitation also offered them something we've lost, the freedom that comes from accepting clear limits. Today, we're constantly confronted with what we could be doing, where we could be living, who we could be being. Each choice carries the weight of all other possibilities we are rejecting. Each day we spend in a seemingly ordinary life is a day we're not living the extraordinary life that algorithms suggest we should be living. This paralysis of infinite choice doesn't just generate indecision, it generates profound existential anxiety about whether we're wasting our one life. The most disturbing thing is that this anxiety becomes self-perpetuating. The more anxious we become about making the right choices, the less capable we become of being fully present in the choices we've already made. We spend more time questioning our decisions than living their consequences. We spend more time imagining alternative lives than building meaning in the life we actually have. This situation is aggravated by the way our culture treats emotional suffering. We've developed a cultural allergy to psychological discomfort. Any feeling of sadness, anxiety, boredom, or loneliness is immediately interpreted as a problem that needs to be solved, preferably quickly and efficiently. We've lost the ancestral wisdom that some forms of suffering are not only normal, but necessary for human growth. When our grandparents felt sadness, they generally had community structures that helped them process it. Religious rituals, family traditions, cultural narratives that gave meaning to suffering. They knew that sadness was part of the human condition and had time and social space to feel it completely before trying to overcome it. We, on the other hand, are encouraged to quickly get over any negative emotional state, as if feeling were a waste of time that prevents us from returning to being productive and optimized. This dysfunctional relationship with our own emotions creates a vicious cycle. When we try to suppress or quickly fix difficult feelings, they don't disappear. They simply go underground. They continue operating in our psyche, but unconsciously, manifesting as that constant restlessness, that sensation that something is wrong even when, objectively, everything seems fine. Moreover, by systematically avoiding emotional discomfort, we lose our natural capacity for resilience. Like muscles that atrophy when not used, our ability to tolerate and process difficult feelings weakens when we constantly avoid them. We become emotionally fragile, vulnerable to being devastated by challenges that previous generations would consider normal parts of human experience. The culture of constant positivity also robs us of something essential, the capacity to find deep meaning in difficulty. Many of life's most transformative experiences emerge not from moments of joy, but from moments of struggle, loss, questioning, and growth through adversity. When we categorize all these moments as negative, to be avoided, we lose access to entire dimensions of human experience that are fundamental to developing wisdom, compassion, and authenticity. There's also a spiritual dimension to this crisis that's often neglected in discussions about mental health. I'm not necessarily talking about organized religion, but something more fundamental, our human need to feel connected to something greater than ourselves, to have a sense of purpose that transcends our immediate personal objectives. For millennia, human beings found meaning through their connections with nature, with lasting communities, with traditions that linked them both to the past and future, with cosmic narratives that explain their place in the universe, many people today live completely disconnected from any of these sources of transcendent meaning. They exist in a perpetual present of immediate stimuli without a clear sense of how their life connects to something broader and more lasting. This spiritual disconnection is not just an intellectual issue, it has profound emotional consequences. When we don't have a sense of purpose that goes beyond our personal goals, any frustration in our individual life becomes devastating. When we don't feel part of a larger narrative, our own personal story can seem insignificant and directionless. When we have no connection to something eternal or transcendent, our awareness of mortality can become a constant source of anxiety instead of a motivator to live more fully. The extreme individualism of our culture, while bringing many benefits in terms of personal freedom and self-determination, has also created a psychological burden that few of us are equipped to carry. Total responsibility for our own happiness and fulfillment. We've been taught that each of us is the CEO of our own life, responsible for optimizing all aspects of our experience. When life doesn't meet our expectations, there's no one to blame but ourselves. Our ancestors, living in more collectivist societies, shared both the burden and joy of existence. They knew their well-being was intrinsically connected to their community's well-being, and this, while sometimes limiting their individual freedom, also relieved them of the impossible pressure of having to create meaning and happiness purely through personal effort. Now, consider how all this manifests in the everyday experience of a modern person. You wake up already immersed in information about global crises you can't solve, social comparisons you can't avoid, opportunities you can't pursue all simultaneously. During the day, you navigate between multiple digital and physical identities, trying to maintain coherence among them all. You're constantly asked to make decisions about issues that previous generations never had to consider. What version of yourself to present on each platform, how to balance productivity with well-being, how to maintain intimate relationships amid constant distractions. You're bombarded with contradictory messages about how you should be living. Be more productive, but also practice self-care. Be ambitious, but also be present. Build your personal brand, but also be authentic. Connect with others, but also be independent. Optimize your experience, but also accept what you can't control. These contradictions aren't accidents. They're inherent features of a culture that has lost coherent narratives about what constitutes a well-lived life. At the end of the day, you may have achieved various objectives, but still feel empty because these objectives were external goals that didn't connect with an internal sense of purpose. You may have received validation from dozens of people, but still feel alone because this validation was superficial and not based on real knowledge of who you are. You may have consumed hours of entertainment, but still feel bored because this entertainment didn't nourish any deep part of you. This is the silent pain of modern society. It's not the result of specific traumatic events, but rather the cumulative product of 1,000 small disconnections, 1,000 micro-betrayals of our deeper nature, 1,000 subtle ways in which our culture encourages us to alienate ourselves from ourselves. What makes this situation particularly challenging is that many of the forces that create this pain are the same forces that have made our life materially more comfortable and full of opportunities. The technology that disconnects us also gives us access to information and people we could never have known otherwise. The culture of infinite choice that paralyzes us also frees us from limitations that could have been oppressive. The individualism that isolates us also allows us to express our authenticity in ways that would be impossible in more conformist societies. We can't simply go back and recreate the social structures of the past, even if we wanted to. Many of these structures had their own deep problems. Systematic oppression of marginalized groups, severe limitation of individual possibilities, passive acceptance of injustices, we now recognize as unacceptable. The challenge we face is more complex. How can we preserve the benefits of modernity while developing new ways to nurture our fundamental human need for connection, purpose, and authenticity? The answer, I believe, is not in technical solutions or political changes, although these may help. The answer lies in a more fundamental transformation in how we understand our own nature and our deepest needs. We need to develop what I call adaptive wisdom, the capacity to honor our evolutionary heritage while consciously navigating the realities of contemporary life. This means, first, recognizing that many of our modern sufferings are not personal failures, but natural responses to an environment that is misaligned with our deeper nature. When you feel that familiar restlessness, instead of judging it as weakness or trying to eliminate it immediately, you can recognize it as valid information about the quality of your current experience. Second, it means developing intentional practices that nurture the dimensions of human experience that our modern culture neglects. This can include regular time, completely disconnected from digital devices, not as punishment, but as a return to the kind of deep presence our nervous system recognizes as home. It can include deliberate investment in relationships that deepen over time, even if this means having fewer superficial connections. It can include engagement with activities that connect you to something greater than your immediate personal objectives, whether through community service, artistic creation, nature contemplation, or spiritual practices that resonate with you. Third, it means developing a wiser relationship with our own emotions and internal experiences. Instead of treating difficult feelings as problems to be solved, we can learn to receive them as natural aspects of human experience that have something important to teach us. Instead of constantly seeking emotional optimization, we can cultivate the capacity to be present with the full range of our experience, including the parts that aren't comfortable. Fourth, it means redefining our relationship with success and achievement. Instead of measuring our worth through external conquests or social comparisons, we can develop internal metrics of well-being based on the quality of our presence, the depth of our connections, the authenticity of our expression, the consistency between our values and our actions. Finally, it means recognizing that the path to a more satisfying life is not individual, but communal. We need to create new types of communities that honor both our need for individual autonomy and our need for deep belonging. This can happen on a small scale. Circles of friends who commit to deeper conversations than the superficial. Families who create regular rituals of genuine connection. Neighborhoods that cultivate interdependence instead of isolation. The transformation we need is not just personal, but cultural. We need to collectively question the narratives our society promotes about what constitutes a well-lived life. We need to create spaces, both physical and cultural, that allow deeper types of human encounter. We need to develop new forms of education that nurture not just technical skills, but also emotional intelligence, relational wisdom, and the capacity to find meaning. This doesn't mean completely rejecting modernity or romanticizing the past. It means consciously integrating the best of what we've learned about individual freedom, scientific knowledge, and technological possibility with older wisdom about community, presence, and purpose. The silent pain you feel is not evidence that there's something wrong with you. It's evidence that there is something wrong with a system that promises us connectivity but delivers isolation, that promises us freedom but delivers paralysis, that promises us happiness but delivers constant anxiety about whether we're being happy enough. Your pain is, in fact, a form of wisdom, your psyche protesting against conditions that aren't suitable for human flourishing. When you recognize this, something fundamental changes. You stop trying to fix yourself to fit a dysfunctional system and begin to consider how you can create more suitable conditions for your own humanity. You stop interpreting your need for deep connection as neediness and begin to see it as valid guidance toward what really matters. You stop judging your difficulty with modern superficiality as personal inadequacy and begin to honor it as spiritual discernment. The future of humanity may very well depend on our collective capacity to make this transition from a culture that encourages us to adapt to systems that diminish us to a culture that encourages us to create systems that allow our fuller flourishing. This won't be easy, and it certainly won't be fast, but it's possible. And it begins with people like you who feel the silent pain and choose not just to endure it, but to understand it as a call to something deeper and more real. If these reflections have touched something you've been feeling, but perhaps haven't found words to express, know that you're not alone. By connecting with others who share these concerns and this desire for a deeper understanding of the philosophical challenges of our time, you'll join a growing community of people who are seeking wiser ways to live amid the transformations we're witnessing. This is not just an intellectual conversation, but a practical journey toward a more authentic and connected life. If you feel these ideas deserve to be shared, consider helping other people find this space of reflection. Each person who awakens to these questions contributes to the possibility of a broader cultural transformation, a change we all need, and that can only happen when enough individuals choose to honor their inner wisdom instead of silencing it. Together, we can begin to create the conditions for a society that nurtures rather than diminishes our deepest humanity, One of the key problems I see today in the world is that you have an extremely cynical view of humans and of human societies spreading both on the right but also on the left. They say that the only reality is power, that all social interactions, all human interactions are actually power struggles, that all human institutions are just conspiracies to gain power, that journalists, scientists, historians, judges, politicians, these are just conspiracies to gain power. Whenever somebody tells you something, you shouldn't ask, is it true? Because nobody cares about the truth. This is naive. They would tell you, no, this is a power play.
Who benefits?
Who benefits? Yeah. Whose privileges are being served? Whose interests are being served? This is something that Donald Trump agreed with Karl Marx, at least on that everything is just a power struggle. And if you think like that, all trust collapses, and the only thing that is left standing, that can remain standing, is a dictatorship. This is not just extremely cynical, this is just wrong. People are not these power-crazy demons.
You don't have children. Is part of the reason you don't have children because you are fearful for the future?
No, it's not a conscious decision. I just never really thought about it. It's not something.
That's so refreshing to hear.
It's just, sometimes I tell people it's the same way I don't have an elephant. I just never thought about it.
I love that. I've never had that response. I'm someone who doesn't have children, and that's just such a wonderful thing to hear. Thank you, Yuval.
All the problems we face, we also have the resources to deal with them. Whether it's climate change, whether it's the rise of AI, we have the resources. What we usually lack is the motivation and the ability to cooperate with one another. But, some people think that to solve the big problems, you always need to use violence, like you can't make an omelette without breaking eggs. But when you look at history, it's absolutely not true. You think, for instance, about the feminist revolution. After thousands of years of a huge injustice, feminism made a huge change in the social structure of humanity without starting any wars, without assassinating anybody, no guillotines in City Square. So that's one of the hopeful examples of how people can, just by changing the story, also change the world. The idea that stories...
I think you're converting people to your religion right now.
The idea that stories kind of fuel history, there is a positive promise there that, if it's all about power, the only way to change power structures is with violence. But if it's really, at least in part, about the stories people believe, then potentially by talking with people and changing the stories in which they believe, you can change the world.